So my connection with consciousness and healing has always been there, meaning that from a young child I was clairvoyant and clairsentient and had psychokinesis, which means had the ability to move objects, which I didn't know what those were until much later in life, and it scared me. So I had prophetic dreams, and they were oftentimes in the paper or in the news within a day or two, and it really freaked me out because I thought I was causing it. So I, as a young kid, had an experience of what information was I accessing, and I was very fascinated of quantum physics and medicine. My father was a medical doctor, mostly in pharmacy. I became comfortable as a child with understanding that there was a local consciousness in that how we relate to each other, and that there may be a non-local consciousness in how we relate to information in the field. It was concerning to me that I was picking up information that was in the field that I was then sensitive to. But I also realized that it was part of my intuition and part of a life-saving gift. So I learned to embrace it. However, I had to go through a lot of steps in between, figuring out that I was uncomfortable with it for many years as a young child, and then to find my comfort with it. And that journey essentially took me from learning what I learned as a kid, and then going into a corporate environment and growing up in just our regular society. And all the while embracing my intuitive knowing, but didn't really find that there was an actual role for me, that I was actually not really on my path, which I didn't discover until later. And it took me living across the street from Ground Zero after the buildings had fallen. So this was around 2003, 2004-ish. And what was going on down there is the buildings had fallen, it was a big hole, but the cleanup was underway. So all the buildings that needed to be taken apart were being taken apart floor by floor. Well, I was living in one of the only inhabited buildings at the time because rent was cheap. So my view was of the hole looking down from the 11th floor. Well, I was not prepared for what was going to happen to me psychically, emotionally, physically, none of it. And I had some really dramatic physical things happen. A chronic bronchitis that didn't ever seem to want to resolve. I had all of a sudden these enormous nosebleeds that were matter coming out of my nose that all of a sudden I would catch in my hands. And it was very scary. So this would happen all in the middle of the night, and then sometimes during my work day as I would sit at my desk, just this gushing of blood. And so I got very nervous about a lot of different things, like what was causing this, wondered if it was my cell phone, wondered what it was. Well, about 2 years, and my nose constantly being cauterized and fixed and all of this went on, and I moved out of the neighborhood, but the symptoms kept going. So I saw pulmonologist after pulmonologist, cardiologist, because I was having tachycardic events, which means a fast heart rate. And so it was very confusing to me, all of what was happening. And still, after taking all the drugs, I still wasn't getting well. What I ended up doing was going to see a medical intuitive. After laying on my floor one day in total surrender, not being able to really catch a breath and wondering what was going to happen to me, I got a very strong impression to go see a medical intuitive. So I let my fingers do the walking in a Natural Pages phone book and found a person, and ended up making contact with this woman, and she essentially in our first visit, comes out of a trance state and says, "You have 3 days to make up your mind." I wanted to pretend that I didn't know what she was talking about, but somewhere deep in my psyche and gut, I knew that there was this thing about me not being on my path. And I knew the work that I was doing was important, but it was not my path. So, and what ended up happening is me getting into a point of surrender and realizing that, okay, I am ready to step into the role of being the healer and I sometimes have a problem with that word, in that it describes the person actually doing something, and I very much feel like I am the one just letting things happen through me and being the conduit. So when I say that, I really say it with no ego, because there's a much greater forces above us that are, and around us, that are doing that work, I believe. So when the message was for me to step into my role as being a healer and one who helps those to help themselves, I understood that I needed to go back to school. I needed to figure out some things, and the way I'm wired is that there needs to be science behind what I do, and even though some of it may not be explainable, there needs to be something behind it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have a full call.
That experience of hearing from the medical intuitive made me know that I needed to get a little bit more background into, if I'm going to switch careers, if I'm going to switch my life, if I'm going to get on my path, what does this really mean? So I ended up, at the time, actually, I was at a really high-powered law firm in New York City, and really making the height of my career dollars, and had to make a really big decision to leave all that. And having a great deal of trepidation and fear on, well, what does this mean now? As one becomes a healer, then do they get broke? Or is there no life? What happens? Does your life just get completely taken over and consumed? There were a lot of beliefs that I didn't even realize I was carrying. So what ended up happening is that I ended up going to a graduate seminary called Holos University. And this was a school that was began by Carolyn Mace, who is a renowned medical intuitive, and Norm Shealy, who is a renowned neurosurgeon. Both of them very much pioneers. So 5 years of work with them and many other mystics, modern mystics, and incredible doctors teaching. I learned a lot of different healing modalities, and probably most importantly is I got on my own healing journey and healed a lot of my relationship with my earlier wounds of being young and having these gifts and misunderstanding the gifts and not understanding how it was that I was supposed to use them or even what they mean. And allowing that to open back up, and the fear that also brought in. So working with myself and with many others, what we did at Holos was did a lot of case studies and helping other people with where they were through the different modalities that we were doing. At the same time at going to Holos, I was also going to a hands-on healing school called Core Star, which is using the Barbara Brennan methods, and it's the same as Healing Touch, the same methods. So I really wanted to be well-rounded in my offerings if I was going to do this, and be able to have the understanding and develop my own intuition in that realm. So that's really the background on my story. And now I have been in private practice, gosh, I guess it's going on 11 years. And really my joy is that I get to work alongside many medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, osteopathic physicians, and other allied professionals as well. And what we get to do together is actually see the whole person. And that's what was missing for me in the time of being confused about what was actually happening to my body when I got really sick. And what does a wake-up call really look like? Sometimes it's a pretty big whack with what we sometimes call the spiritual 2x4. And so that was mine, but now what does that mean for other people? What does it look like? So what I can do now in working as a team, on a team with other professionals, is help identify where something is a psycho-spiritual emotional issue, and helping to take that apart and work at the same time. Because I think that's key. If someone is undergoing chemotherapy because that's their choice, fine. Let's support them in what their choices are, and help them with nutrition as medicine, food as medicine, as well as being able to just look at the whole person. So it's really set me up for being able to do that in an interactive and integrative environment. An example of working as an integrative practitioner on a team, when I had a client referred to me from a physician, and they really didn't know what more to do with her. She had multiple situations with heart issues, stents, and she was young and under 40. Lots of injury, like trauma injuries, and a deep background in trauma. And what was happening is a split in her personality, and she was becoming a multiple. Now, she had worked with psychiatrists and psychologists for many years, and it was asked of me, what do you think you can do? And there is something that I do in my practice that I call personal self-integration, and it has to do a lot with looking at not just the whole person from a physical place, but a whole person from a subconscious and unconscious place. Because in my professional opinion, what we say about the subconscious and unconscious is that it's 80 to 90% of our operating system, and most of the time we leave the story right there, and that is really leaving a lot out. So with the personal self-integration, I was unsure about being able to do that work with her, being that she was so fractured and so split, to then introducing that, oh, we have so many other characters that are part of our subconscious and unconscious, and let's get to know them from an archetypal point of view. And I had deep trepidation in going there, but found after a few sessions where we were literally dealing with a personality that would go around the room. One personality would be comfortable in one place of the room. Another personality wouldn't be comfortable speaking at all and only drawing pictures. Another personality would come out and be very aggressive, and different parts would come out. So it took some time to be able to weed through this, and for me to get a lay of who it is that we're dealing with. And then all of a sudden, I had courage to bring up this idea of we have multiple selves within us, and let's embrace that. And we are not trying to force an integration within you. We are doing our best to allow all parts of us to exist holistically. So let's hear from all parts, and let's really understand what it is that we can do to help you feel more safe even in your own body. Because there was also risk of suicide with this person. So what ended up happening in very short time is the multiple personalities stopped. We were not dealing with this bouncing around the room and who is it now and in all of this. And a lot of her health issues, there are still things to deal with. But I believe that there's a mental and emotional piece that will allow the healing to really take place at the physical level. So that I also believe that there are fields to the consciousness that are around us, and that there's different content within these fields. And within those fields, we have an ability to access that type of information as we allow that information to come in. In that relationship, a healing can take place, and that's what I'm witnessing with this person.